Tonight's lecture. My name is Elric. I'm a member of the board. We have a very special lecture tonight by our fearless leader, Lorentz, who is the president of the Jung Association of Western Massachusetts. We are an all-volunteer organization. That means the board members are volunteers. That means that we get volunteers to help us out with things that we need to do. I want to thank Austin and Mr. Ryder over there for helping with this table tonight. This is the kind of thing we need sometimes, to just call on some folks and they help us. I just want to thank also Mark and Diana, Daphne. All of them are helpful volunteers to the organization. I want to thank the board. I'm very grateful to see Thayer and Anita here tonight. I just want to mention them, honorable mention. And our treasurer, Carol Beauvais. Before we begin, I want to just go over some basic business. The lecture will go until 9 o'clock. We will not have a break. So if you should need to use a restroom, there is a restroom right out in this hallway. It's open to all genders. There's also a restroom down the hall, which I believe is specifically for women. But feel free if you need to. Please, if you have a cell phone, could you silence it now? That would be very helpful. We are recording tonight's event on film, so it's very helpful not to have phones ringing in the middle of the lecture. And it's also very distracting. So thank you. We have an email list over here. If you'd like to receive emails from the organization to let you know when the next lecture is happening and other business and events, please put your name and your email on that list over there. There's also a sign-up list over there for a workshop coming up. We have flyers. If you see flyers on the table and you know of a great bulletin board, please grab a few and put them up where you know that they'll be seen, because that's very helpful to us as well. I want to mention that on April 5th, our next lecture will be Russell Holmes. His lecture is called Hope the Appetite. And part of what he says about it is that inherent in the state of being alive, hope, the earliest value, is indispensable. I quite agree. And that will be April 5th, the first Friday in April. The spring will be coming. It will definitely be on its way, and it will be a good time to talk about hope. The next lecture will be on May the 3rd, the first Friday in May, and that will be Diane Croft. Her lecture is entitled Cooked in the Vessel. That will also be a very interesting lecture. I want to mention that Erica Lorentz, who's our speaker tonight, has a workshop at the Jung Institute in Boston on May 18th. That will be from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. It is called Body as Shadow, and she can tell you maybe a little bit more about that when she takes the stage. We also have a study group that is forming. Daphne is going to be doing that. It's a study group on archetypes, and maybe Daphne would like to say just a couple of words.
Actually, it'll be led by Erica. And we're going to have 4 sessions. This will be studying different archetypes, and we're also going to encourage people who are taking part to do, first of all, to do some reading ahead of time, which we'll send out, and then also on their own to bring in any images or poems or texts that particularly connect in your mind with the particular archetype we're looking at. I don't have the dates with me, but they will be in the next e-letter that goes out from the Jung Association.
So if you're not on the email list, get on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's the reason to get on it.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to mention, too, that you'll notice these baskets on either end of the room. We are an all-volunteer organization. Our only sources of income come from you, the community, and we very much appreciate anything you might donate. And if you can't, obviously, that's not a problem. We're glad that you're here. I do want to say, again, welcome to you. You are the community, and this community is based on the teachings and the psychology of Carl Gustav Jung. And I would like to say that it's been my experience with this community that what it seems to be about is soul talk. So this is the place for Soul Talk. And I want to thank you all for bringing your beautiful souls tonight. I'm going to turn this over now to our board member, Penny, and she's going to introduce Erica. Thank you. Oh, one more thing, the salon. Mark probably gave you one. If you didn't get one of these, this is a little explanation of our salon. After the lecture, the salon is a place where you can get to know each other, maybe meet a stranger, make a new friend, and have some soul talk. And that will be led by Mark. Mark, why don't you stand up? That's Mark, and he will be your host. And the meeting tonight will be at the Mosaic Cafe, 78 Masonic Street. You can follow him after the lecture if you'd like. And, oh, one last thing. Thank you. There's so many announcements. There's so much going on. I wanted to alert you to, on Saturday, March 16th at 3 o'clock in the Forbes Library Community Room, there will be a presentation called Appointment with the Wise Old Dog, Dream Images in a Time of Crisis. I'm going to read this to you. The unique paintings David Blum created throughout his life and increasingly during his battle with cancer are a window into his spiritual journey. The wise old dog who came to David in dreams was his guide and his comfort. Through these images and David's insightful commentary, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit, the power of art to help us understand life, and the role creativity can play in healing and transcendence. So please, there will be some flyers over there for that. And if you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask. And now Penny. Okay, that was written by Yo-Yo Ma, what I just read.
Is this working? Good. I'm going to introduce Erica Lorentz tonight. The first thing I'd like to say is that she's been the president for over 6 years. And I would like to thank her because it's a tremendous group to hold. And she has done so much and has brought in many wonderful presenters, including John Peck, one of the translators of the Red Book. And now we have Ed and Kate, Ed Tick, who's bringing in the moral wound of war and other archetypal issues. And I'm mentioning this because, as Elric said, it takes a village of volunteers, audience, presenters, Smith College, etc. And Erica has been holding this on her shoulders with a lot of help, but it's still a lot to hold, so thank you, Erica. I met Erica about 5 or 6 years ago, and we are colleagues at the Boston Institute, and we are friends, and we are fellow travelers in the transpersonal realms as well. She moved east after years of study and practice in Houston, Texas, where she did her training in Jungian work. And I asked her what she would like me to share with you tonight, and this is what she said. It might be nice to talk a bit about why I wrote my Jungian thesis. Since I was a child, I've had subtle body experiences. From 1987 to 1992, I had an intense period of connection with the collective unconscious. It started with horrendous headaches that demanded that I pay attention to the unconscious material that was trying to emerge. I worked deeply in an authentic movement group with my mentor, Janet Adler, as facilitator and witness. It took me into and through my body in a deeper way than I had ever experienced. It changed my life and my relationship to and understanding of the collective unconscious, and I am very grateful for this intense experience. I wanted to understand the process that I had gone through and turned to Jung. I also began to have clients come in who needed similar understanding of experiences that they'd had. They had never talked about them to anyone else and often felt weird about what they were feeling. I loved supporting others' processes in a way both individually and in workshops and classes and authentic movement groups held weekly. They gave me permission to use their material to illustrate my thesis. I continue to be interested in and learn about subtle body experiences. I've collected many books chronicling people's journey with archetypal body experiences and have indexed Jung's collective works on anything he said about the body. Erica and I have traveled to California and New Mexico and have been sharing breathwork experiences, which are embodied spiritual experiences. She loves to travel externally and internally, and she is very much about making meaning. She is a philosopher and a movement person, and she's here to share more of her findings and passion with you tonight. And she is going to offer a dream group this spring, starting, I think it's April 3rd, in Amherst. And these little flyers are over here on the table. And she invites you to take some, distribute them to friends, put them up, whatever, but there'll be a limited number of spots. So if you're interested, please sign up, and I'm sure it will be quite interesting. So with that, Erica, again, thank you. And
thank you, Penny and Elric and my board and everybody who's here. Get this out. There is a sign-up sheet for my dream group if anybody's interested. So please. So, as Penny said, this was my thesis, and I have given this lecture many times. I gave it here, I think, in 2011. Oops, there goes my name. Oops. And it changes every time I give it. So I think, oh, I don't need to look at that, and then I start looking at it, and I change the last part, and it keeps morphing. So we'll see what comes out tonight. So, okay. So I also brought a bibliography of, I have been collecting people's spiritual biographies, modern people. We can go back and we can read the mystics, and we can read all kinds of Yuktamanda, we can read all kinds of that. But I became very interested in modern people's experiences. So there's a bibliography over there if you're interested of people who have had all kinds of experiences and that I feel are very legitimate. Okay. So the crisis of our time, as Jungian analysts say every time they get up here, is that we are alienated. We're alienated from the psyche, we're alienated from the unconscious, we're alienated from our lives, we're alienated from nature, and we're alienated from our bodies. I was a dance therapist in a hospital, and all the doctors could understand art therapy and music therapy, but when it came to movement therapy, they were very threatened by that. You're going to do what? You're going to get people in touch with their bodies and help them express. So there's a real alienation and a split between the body and the mind, starting with before Descartes, but he was the one who sort of put it on the map. And I think medicine is beginning to come back and realize that that's not true. So the other thing that's true in our culture is that there is no cultural container for these kinds of experiences, for spiritual experiences, and for experiences of the collective unconscious. So it needs a strong container. And there's also a split body, mind, soul, spirit. So when Jung broke from Freud, of course, he went into his own journey and he chronicled it in the Red Book. Has anybody seen the Red Book? A few people, yeah. It's a very amazing journey, and he carefully honored that and then put it in the Black Books, which are now being translated by John Peck and a few others. And then he got a beautiful red leather book, and he put it in the Red Book and in calligraphy. And then he illustrated it with painting, beautiful painting. So if you ever get a chance to look at the Red Book, it's really beautiful. And his journey is very odd to us modern people. It doesn't resonate with what we think as normal. And the Red Book, that journey was Jung's Rosetta Stone. It was what he looked at and what he tried to understand and come to grips with and explain for the rest of his life. And he was also very interested in how his journey could help other people. And when I'm up here, I'm not going to just talk at you for an hour. I'd like people to interact with me and ask me questions or say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Okay. And Jung's journey was a dialogue with the unconscious, and that's what became the cornerstone of his work, was having an active dialogue with the unconscious, not just in our dreams when we're passive. Dreams are very important, and then we have to interact with the dreams to understand them. So, okay, whoops. So in 1992, there was a wonderful conference called the Fires of Desire, and Murray Stein was part of that, and he said, we must recognize that the Jungian revolution offers an enormous opening for research and investigation and practice into regions that have largely been taboo or pathologized, namely religious experience, visionary states of many kinds, parapsychology, and all forms of human spirituality. Now, this is what was happening. Experiences like what Jung had in many people were pathologized by the medical community over time and got worse and worse. And this is not just an intellectual thing. We can't just read about this in books, and you can't make it happen. How many people have tried to make have a spiritual experience? It doesn't work. It comes by grace. We can open up to it. We can invite it, but it comes of its own will. And sometimes, like my headaches, it hits you over the head and it says, "Pay attention." So, yeah.
Would you mind just shutting that closet door behind you so that there's flashing?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Minor. Thank you.
Could I ask, did Jung ever experiment with psychedelic drugs?
No.
Did his patients ever?
No.
He didn't explore that realm at all.
No, Stanislav Grof did, and I don't think they knew each other. No, he
there
was
were
later.
some other Jungian animals who did
Yeah.
do work with LSD.
But not Jung. He believed in finding it, in not enhancing that, but finding it inside yourself. So, individuation, which I'll explain a little bit later, can only take place if you first return to your body, to your earth. Only then does it become true. Individuation can take place when it is realized, when somebody notices it. Otherwise, it's like the eternal melody of the wind in the desert, which I feel is happening a lot in modern life. People have experiences, and then they think they're weird, or they don't understand them, or they put them aside, and they're very important, because we need to get this understanding, this container back. It's part of our journey to save the planet. Is my experience, is my feeling. Jung talked a lot about the body, believe it or not. In fact, at the end of each volume of the collected work, I indexed everything he said about the body, and especially in the Zarathustra seminar. So he spoke a lot about it, and he was a very earthy guy. part of his active imagination was building a house on the shores of Lake Zurich, and carving in stone, and painting, and writing. That was mostly how he worked. And any spiritual journey or any transformation has to happen as we experience it. If we just read theory and read about it, it doesn't transform us. So Jung really believed in that. This is a big one. Jung is very pithy. The body claims equal recognition. It exerts the same fascination as the psyche. If we can reconcile ourselves to the mysterious truth, the spirit is the life of the body seen from within, and the body is the outward manifestation of the life of the spirit, the two being really one, then we can understand why acceptance of the unconscious must give the body its due, and why recognition of the body cannot tolerate a philosophy that denies it in the name of spirit, like most of the patriarchal religions have come to do. Okay, so I'm going to get us right into this because I think it's really important to, sorry, I have to do a little switch here. Important to just sort of begin to feel it or understand it. Now, I want you to just sit back and take this in. I don't want you to think about it and try to analyze it and interpret it.
At the time of night prayer, as the sun slides down, the route to senses walk on closes. The route to the invisible opens. The angel of sleep then gathers and drives along the spirits, just as the mountain keeper gathers his sheep on the slope. That's the image. And what amazing sights he offers to the descending sheep. Cities with sparkling streets, hyacinth gardens, emerald pastures. The spirits see astounding beings. Turtles turn to men. Men turn to angels. When sleep erases the banal. I think one could say that the spirit goes back to its old home. It no longer remembers where it lives, and it loses its fatigue. It carries around in life so many griefs and loads, and trembles under their weight. They're gone. It's all well. They are gone. It's all well. So that's lovely.
In the Sufi orders, the one that was generated by Rumi, the Mevlevi order, their distinctive ritual is a circling motion which has caused those Sufis to be called the whirling dervishes. And it comes from Rumi himself, who found himself drawn to circle pillars in his mosque. He would cup his hand and around a pillar and lean back, and found that that motion, for some, who knows what the symbolism is, maybe planets circling the sun, would just release a torrent of ecstatic poetry. And much of his poetry just came spilling out of him in that motion. Now that took hold, and his followers developed a similar ritual of circling. In their case, their sheikh rather than a pillow.
The secret turning in us makes the universe turn. Head unaware of feet, and feet head. Neither cares. They keep turning. The secret turning in us makes the universe turn. It's an image of surrender and discipline at the same time. If you've seen it done, you see that. They go, and then they just open and flower out, and they never fall. They're always in total synchrony, and they know where they are. They're in concert with the galaxies and the molecules and all these things that go like this. That's what I've always loved about the Sufis. They say that the great world is inside. This world that looks so huge and magnificent is the microcosm. The macrocosm is our inner life. It just reverses science. Or maybe the new science is saying something like that. That the inner world is the giant place, and the world, the outside world that we see, is the language that we use to speak of the inner.
If we look deeply enough, actually, into the heart of science itself, we might discover that what Rumi and other great seers and sages and the wisdom traditions were saying was actually true. At the heart of creation, there is only that field of love, that ultimately even our material success comes from the ability to love and have compassion, comes from the capacity to experience joy and ecstasy and share it with others.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? What did you experience when that was shown? That's a beautiful piece, isn't it? Just take it in for a minute. I get out of here. Anybody? Yeah.
It reminded me of when I was a little girl. I used to love spinning around and getting dizzy,
Mm-hmm.
just twirling.
Yeah.
It took me right back to doing that feeling at specific moments. And also going around a pole. I think a lot of kids do that and really feel the pole on my hand. There's just something very calming and elating at the same time about making that movement around the center of the pole.
And so what did it make you feel inside?
Like a combination of calmness and elation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Joe.
I had a dual impression of the Sufi turning in their room. Looking at their faces, they seemed so ecstatic as if they were out of their body.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the strength of the body there, but the strength of the mind or the consciousness in another realm.
Yeah. It's like what he was saying. It's that letting go and the discipline at the same time, because they know where they are. They're circling their shape, and Sufis only do it for like 10 minutes at a time. They go in, they turn, and they stop, and it's very disciplined. They don't do it forever. Has anybody tried twirling? Yeah, it's quite an interesting experience, isn't it? Yeah.
I actually participated in the Sufi Zikr, like you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Can you speak up a little bit?
I've actually participated in the same Sufi practice called Zikr that they're describing here. And seeing it portrayed reminded me of the feeling that it produces.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like, it was interesting, kind of like a somatic flashback of the experience.
Yeah? What did it feel like?
Open-heartedness, clarity, peace.
Uh-huh.
You're in love with nothing in particular. It's agape love pouring free.
Yeah, great. Yeah, yes.
I did an art piece about, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, where I was looking at women spinning in dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And I photographed that a lot. And I had a student at the time that was writing poetry about, she was like, I don't know, she was in high school. She was writing poetry about that very thing. and she pointed out to me that when you're spinning in a dress, you're still in the center, but your clothing, your dress is reaching out. And
Mhm.
it's this contradiction. And I have that poem somewhere. It's
Mhm.
really good.
Yeah. Yeah, Carol.
Yeah, I was in at a dance camp of people who are very spiritual through dance, and we would dance through the night with drums. And one time, all of a sudden, everyone in the room began spinning, and it just overcame me. It wasn't anything I intended. It overcame me, and my experience, first of all, was that I was being held up. There was no effort on my part to hold myself up, if I can explain that. And then I became, it felt like I became still. Even though I was spinning, I was still. And the world was spinning around me. So the world was spinning out there, and I was the still point. And I was not tired.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, you don't have to be moving or be dancing or, when we have a spiritual connection, we feel it. We might see a sunset that just opens us. And we feel that opening. We feel the connection. We feel the beauty. We feel the connection with something greater than ourselves. So it doesn't matter what form it comes in, but I think it's interesting as an illustration that Houston Smith says that Rumi, part of his poetry came from actually the movement that he was doing. It allowed the poetry to flow. No? Anybody else have an experience of this kind? Yeah, or
what was the part about Bly? Was that a non sequitur? Did you put that in accidentally?
No, that's right Rumi? Before this piece.
He was reading Rumi, or what was?
Yeah, he was reading Rumi. He was, yeah. This film was about Rumi.
What was Bly talking about here?
He was doing a poem. He was reading a poem.
I know, but what was the poem about?
Well, it's a long poem. It's about all of Rumi's poetry is about the spiritual experience, about the opening, and about the container, and about the ritual, and about the experience. So that's what he was talking about.
It struck me as that he was talking about, don't worry about taking any of this with you, because it's not coming with you after.
No, I don't think that's what the Sufis believe, but it's an interesting...
I might have misheard it.
Yeah, hope so. Yeah, Joe.
I understand a little bit from the Sufi turning is that the hands, the postures are significant. So the one hand is being raised up to receive the divine rays, and the other hand is being lowered to nourish the earth.
Right.
And that the dancer is the bridge between the upper world and the lower world.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. It's a beautiful, and those kinds of experiences, or those kinds of gestures come around when we're having spiritual experiences. They just arise, and it's simply letting it come through some way, the energy or whatever. Yes, right.
I was just aware that I wanted everybody who was talking in the film to kind of shut up, and I wanted the dervishes only. I just felt so drenched by whatever they were. I don't know the word. Exuding is not the right word, but anytime anyone started talking, I could feel like a little. I want just them.
Has anybody seen the Whirling Dervishes? Yeah. I saw them once. They were in an auditorium, and I was sitting on a bleacher, which was just killing my back. And I was watching, and there was this one particular dervish that was really in there, because you could tell, because he was just, I mean, you wouldn't be able to normally move like that. He was just way in it. And I just focused on him, and I watched him, and my back just totally was fine. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Now this is Teresa of Avila. This is the famous statue which everybody loves. She's in an ecstasy, and Eros is shooting the arrow. She's in love with God, and she's just in an altered state. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to go back. So what is individuation? Individuation is not about getting born, though maybe that's part of it. We're coming into the world to individuate, but it's not about the childhood. Now we're closest to the collective unconscious and the archetypal level of the unconscious in childhood. I mean, you know how children are just, they say the most amazing things. And they have amazing dreams, and they're in that connection very easily. And Jung had some very powerful experiences as a child. And then in adolescence, we're very open to it for some reason. Maybe it's the hormonal thing, the shift that's happening. And then also as elders tend to become more open to it. And I think part of that is they're shifting their consciousness into passing on. And so these are the 3 times that we're most easily open to this. But the first half of life is about being born into the body ego. You see a little baby and they're just going, what do I do with this body? I'm just trying to figure this out, and they're exploring their body, and that's what they're doing. And then that's the development of the ego, which is our sense of I, me, as separate from you, the universe, which is very, very important. And the development of the ego, and then the development of consciousness in this 3-dimensional reality that we're in, which is extremely important. And so we're separating from the unconscious, and hopefully we're creating a flexible ego, not a rigid ego, to be able to be open to the transpersonal, the archetypal, and the outer world. And the ego is a moderator. It mediates between these two if it's healthy, and it's still connected to the source. So, but and that's the creation of the subject. So Jung says, again and again I note that the individuation process is confused with the coming of the ego into consciousness, and that the ego is in consequence identified with the big S self. Individuation is then nothing but ego-centeredness and autoerotism, but the self comprises infinitely more than the mere ego, as all the symbolism has shown of old. So individuation is about becoming who we truly are. We're born into the world, and then we develop all kinds of issues, complexes from having to deal with the environment and our little true nature, but I'm developing my subject, the I part of me, and so individuation is about getting beyond the ego, and for the ego to come back into a healthy relationship to the transpersonal, which most people lose in our culture at a certain point in development. So it's the creation of the subject that we're doing in our childhood. And as I said, adolescence is often a time when people are more open. When I was in Houston, I was married to a Jungian analyst, and I was an analyst, and I had a stepson, and his mother was an analyst. His mother was an analyst, his father was an analyst, and his stepmother was a Jungian analyst. Oh dear. And he would go out in the backyard and he would talk to the fig tree, and he'd come in and he'd tell us all about talking to the fig tree. And then he wanted to become a Jungian analyst, and I went, oh dear, whoa, this poor guy, he's in such a projection. But it's, but this self, this my own little person, has to develop the subject. in order to be connected with something bigger. So then, Jung says the liberation of this is my quote, of the ego from the collective unconscious is certainly a very necessary and heroic, this is where the hero archetype comes in, but it represents nothing final. It is merely the creation of the subject, me, who, in order to find fulfillment, has to be confronted by the object. And this is where individuation really comes in. And here's a Psyche being in a relationship to Eros, the Eros and Psyche, and she had to become related to Psyche and then be separated from him in order to start her own individuation process. And most fairy tales talk about the connection and then the disruption of the connection, and that starts the journey of me finding my healthy relationship to the divine. Okay. So the second half of life then is about that. So we come up, we grow up, we learn how to deal with the world, we hope, to whatever extent that is. And then we have to go have a rapprochement. We have to come back and work through whatever issues are between me and the divine, or and in my creative process. So the second half of life is about that. It's about the ego realigning with the self, and the ego realizes at some point that it's really not in charge. It doesn't need to be in charge. The ego needs to help us do whatever we need to do, but ultimately it is not in charge of our individuation of, Diana.
Where is that sculpture from? Is it an ancient?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Greece?
It's very old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think?
So gorgeous.
Isn't it? Yeah. Beautiful.
And does she have a wound on her abdomen?
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
she wouldn't in
Okay.
the story.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe.
Can I ask maybe a very naive question?
Yeah.
What is the actual moment of the coming to existence of the ego? Is it at the first breath, or does it take place at a certain moment of so-called education?
Mm.
And when is the birth of the ego?
I think it develops. It's not
What
a
is the
moment.
first moment? There is no
Well,
moment.
the moment is when the child comes out of the womb.
Is it? Is there ego at that moment?
Well, it's not that there's ego, it's that that's the beginning. The body ego. The child is, it's not thinking about it, right? It's experiencing it. Yeah, there. Yeah.
I observe in my grandchildren and sometimes in other people's grandchildren that a critical issue in ego development is the second stage in Erickson's development of the ego, autonomy versus shame and doubt. That it's very difficult to have an ego sense of one's identity and emerging individuality if you do not have a sense of autonomy. And one of the things that I found so revealing was meals with my young grandchildren years ago. I was always struck the first time I heard them say, I. It usually wasn't until that second stage of development. Unfortunately for some developing young children, where there's a kind of intrusive dominance of the egos of the parents, they do not really permit the I to develop. And it has to be fought for at a later date.
Right. Well, that's part of the working with the shadow and the rapprochement. Howard, can you turn on the back lights? It feels a little dark in here. Just put those on. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a particular time in development when the child goes. There is that I'm you. But what I'm saying is that this from the body ego, this develops and then there's a moment. But I don't think you can say that that's the moment that the ego is formed, because it starts to form as soon as the body ego is there. I mean, many people have had children. You watch the baby, and it's wonderful to watch a baby. They're trying to put themselves in the body. They're like, oh, what is this? Where am I? You know, how do I do this? Yeah, Mark.
I'm a Montessori teacher. She had some wonderful observations about childhood development, and she noticed that at around age 6, 7, the ego was formed enough to explore outside of the family.
Right. There are definitely developmental stages that the child goes through, and the thing that separates us the most from all this, from the beauty of the divine and our I mean, if you think about indigenous cultures, they don't get separated. It's in their culture, it's in their milieu, it's in their everyday life, it's in their ritual, and we've lost that. We go to church, but it's the religions of today are usually tainted by a very patriarchal view, and not happy about the body. The body is evil in some of them. Okay, so after the child is formed, after we come into maybe, I mean, all these forces, as they're said, are getting in between me and this connection, or me and my connection to my true self, which includes the archetypal. So what is the archetype? What are we talking about? This is from Don Kalshid. He says, archetypes are spiritual powers that seem to support psychic integration and wholeness, but without adequate human mediation and relatedness, they can turn into their opposite, life-threatening defenses that undermine the ego's agency. Now, the spiritual powers that we hopefully are connected with are the ones that are helpful. And ones that are helpful can even help us deal with the ones that are split and make it difficult for us. I'm thinking like if the mother archetype or the father archetype is particularly tyrannical or controlling or destructive, we might talk about the witch or the tyrant. So those are the archetypes that then we might have to battle with and learn how to handle and learn how to. But it's very important that if we're battling with a witch or a tyrant or I'm trying to think of some other negative archetypes, or we're caught in, say, the trickster, where we can't stop. We feel like we're being tricked all the time, or we can't stop playing. Like somebody who's the clown in a class, they might be caught in the trickster. They can't be serious because that's their defense. Or the warrior archetype could get very destructive if it's turned against oneself. So what is an archetype? So it's self. It's the self, the biggest self that Jung talks about, is the archetype of archetypes. It's the one that is the ruler of the archetypal world, and it guides us. Our connection to the self guides us, and I have a different image of the self than you do. Jung says the image of the self for women is the feminine. The image for the self for men is usually masculine. So it's self, it's primordial one, it's the Tao, it's nothingness in Buddhism. It's the ground of being, it's the matrix, it's the web of life, and in alchemy they call it the scintilla naturae. It's the little sparks in the darkness that have life and soul. And Jung says, in individuation we consciously discover the relation or the identity of the personal with the suprapersonal, and of the individual Tao, my way, with the universal Tao. The visualization of the self is a window into eternity. Any other thoughts, any other images or ideas about what an archetype is? Name some archetypes that you feel connected with. Yeah.
Can you talk about the difference between the self and the ego, because those words are used together so often? Right.
For Jung, the self was bigger than the ego. The self was the wholeness. The self was the wholeness of the personality. The self was the archetypal divine place. But that now people use that interchangeably. So that's why I put it with a big S, because it helps us to separate to figure out which one we're talking about. Yeah. And Jung also said that the self is the whole personality. So it's us and it's beyond us at the same time. Yeah, Carol?
It's hard for me often to look at the words. The words make sense. But I feel my understanding of those words came from my experience.
Yes, exactly. That's what Jung did. He didn't just write about it, he was experiencing something. So he was trying to articulate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've often wished, as I said, that we have a group where we talked about I worked up from my experiences up to the concepts.
Absolutely. And that's what Jung did.
But I would wish that we as a group had some container for that.
Right. Container for you to do that work? You mean to...
well, the experiences come when they come.
Right.
I'm just saying there's something that hasn't happened. That's all I can say.
Well, this might not be your particular language. This was Jung's language, right? You might have another image or another word instead of the self. He was trying to make it general.
No, I love Jung.
Yeah.
I read this book.
Yeah.
But I do, that's all the best I can say is that I had experiences. And then I feel very close to the Jungian work, but then I try to read.
You try to find your experience in the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, we all have images of a helpful guide. It can be anything. It can be an animal. Animals are often archetypal, helpful guides. They come up in dreams. We might have an image of the sacred mountain. There are all these archetypal images that have kind of become part of the nomenclature of most spiritual traditions. The mountain, I think, is in almost all traditions. The ocean, the lake. What other archetypal images can you think of?
Desert.
The desert. Christ and was in the desert for 40 days. That doesn't necessarily mean, Joe?
Would the witness be considered archetypal?
Yeah.
Was it the idea of the witness, the over self, it just sees things, it doesn't react or get involved with things, it's just always there, like the blue mind, you don't know it's there, but it's there.
Yeah. The Sufis call it the friend. Yeah. What other?
Divine Mother.
The Divine Mother. Yeah. What other images come up?
What about the mall? What about contemporary things, like the integration of now stuff?
Right. So what have people had in dreams? What have you had when you felt open? You felt open to something greater than you. Doesn't matter what it is, but it opens you. It opens your heart. It opens your energy system, so we say. Yeah. What do people, yeah.
The hero archetype, because it takes courage to do these things. It isn't, gee, it's a lovely walk in the park or,
Right.
Through the daisies. There's suffering, there's challenge, there's fear of the unknown. When you have to let go of your ego identity, there's a fear of the unknown.
Absolutely.
And so, the hero of being willing to take on that challenge and do that journey.
Yes.
And Campbell was
Right.
all about that, and you
Right.
offer yourself.
Yeah. So what have people found helpful when they're trying to do inner work? Look at your dreams. Yeah.
Creating ritual containers.
What?
Doing little ritual and ways of creating containers to tell your conscious that you're listening,
Mhm.
and to kind of then bring that out into the world when you have the experiences and kind of like both feedback loop between the inner and the outer that way.
Yeah. When I want to do some inner work, I usually put candles around, and that creates a container, a temenos, so that I can feel like I'm in a safe place and I'm protected. The circle. I mean, all these images can be very modern. The mountain, it might come up in somebody's dream. They're finding their way up the mountain. Yeah. So yeah.
I like to stand in a waterfall.
Okay. And that really, what does that feel like when you stand in a waterfall?
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah, the combination of rock and the waterfall and the sound and the power and the feel of it, it's just a transport.
It transports you. Yes, that's a good word. It transports you. You aren't just in your little body worrying about getting dinner or worrying about that you lost something or worrying about the next thing you have to do. You're in a sacred space. And you can there's no time at that moment. There's no time, there's no space. Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is float on a lake on the back. And just be held by the water and eventually sometimes I'm watching whatever goes past cloud-wise. If the sky is clear, it's like being held by the planet.
Being held by the planet. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we think that these experiences are so out there, so we can't have them. But we have them all the time. We wake up from a dream and we're like, oh wow, I feel different. And we have to work to understand the dream. But I mean, the Buddhists say there is no enlightenment without suffering, like you were saying. It's not just a walk in the park. You have to work. You have to stay together. You have to stay on the path. So, and as we're working on the path, one of the things we have to do is go back and work through our shadow material, work through whatever issues we have in our childhood. If we do that work, we're more open to the archetypal. We can be more, access it more. And if we're connected with the positive archetypal world, then we can also have the strength and the courage to face some of the issues that are most difficult. So it's a weaving, our individuation process is a weaving back and forth between these two aspects of ourselves and these two realms. Yeah.
This is really a curiosity and a question as much as a statement. I'm a child of the 20th century, born in 1926, and to me the great technological advance of the last 100 years or so was by Alexander Graham Bell, where the telephone rang and you picked it up and you talked to a person.
That must have been quite an experience when it first happened.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I observe at this point with Twitter and Facebook and endless cell telephones and everybody looking at the image in a phone is a depersonalization, not a personalization. A reliance on technology, not on the experience of the body.
Right.
It is so dramatically different than standing under a waterfall and having a deep spiritual insight. And it demands rationality, verbal communication, and a disembodied connection with whatever is out there.
Right.
And so this very meeting is a radical step away from the increasingly dominant mode of human experience in which our bodies aren't really involved.
Right.
It's our heads, our words, and there isn't time anymore either. The experience of 50 years ago when I grew up, or 80 years ago, would be so much more pastoral. I did research.
So there, I don't want to. Okay. But so the question is, particularly now in our modern culture, like I said, we're very split off from all of this. How do we find our access to this? And Jung says, which is what my whole premise is that you have to access it with the body. Not that you have to move or stand under a waterfall necessarily, which helps. Those things help. But it has to be an experience. It can't be a fantasy or a fantasy without experience. But it has to be real. You know? So we have to come back to a reality that we've been separated from. Yeah, Penny.
Can you go back to Eros and Psyche, the image for a minute?
Yeah. You want me to go back to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I was thinking and remembering is that's the tenderness that the mother, who is really available, meets her baby with that utter tenderness, and it is a total acceptance of love, both ways. And if you have that kind of secure attachment, that's implanted right in your body and in your soul from the beginning. So in some ways, it's a little easier to move from there.
Yes, it is.
I was also thinking about remembering my young children spinning around my body. And I was the host.
You were the shake.
Yeah, I didn't have that kind of early mothering, but I was able to get there. I mean, I had a lot of analysis before I became a mother. But the embodiment, you know, if it comes through the personal mother, it is very different than most of us who have to come through animals and nature, and you know, we're all trying to get there.
Right.
And I think that's a template underneath a love relationship.
Well, I think that's what we want.
Yeah.
We don't always get it.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. But I'm saying, I think that's possible for mother and baby. And I also wanted to say the speed with which everything is being lived and not experienced. You know, to have the time for even just that gazing and holding in
with
this
each other.
modern culture is just,
absolutely. That gaze. Okay, I'm going to show you another film. Okay, so here's another one, and I really want you to, again, this will be very interesting because it's very different. This is a film by Maya Deren, who went down to Haiti in 1946, I think, and she she was also already initiated into the voodoo tradition, and they allowed her to come into their ceremonies and film them, which is very, very unusual. And in this, the Loa is the divine archetypal being, and the Lunga is the priest. Now, priests are feminine or masculine. Doesn't have to do with gender. And you can tell the priests because they have gourds. You'll see the gourd. And so they have a series of ceremonies that they honor the gods, and the priest goes, or anybody can go into trance and can gain information and help for the people and for themselves. So the first one that they have to honor is Legba, because Legba is the guardian of the sacred gateway. Legba is the threshold. He's very important. He's the link between the visible and the invisible. So he is the guide. You have to make, and they create this very, like a sand painting, but it's around, there's always a pole or a tree, and they do this very elaborate chalk painting around it to create the sacred space. So I want you to just allow yourself again to just feel this. Oops. Come on. Go in.
You turn the back lights off, please.
Let me turn that one off. Does that help? You want to just turn that back one off? Thank you.
Possession is the psychic phenomenon which occurs when the divinity becomes manifest. Mounts a person, or that a person is mounted by the Loa. The metaphor is drawn from a horse and his rider, and the actions and events which result are the expression of the will of the rider. It is the center towards which all roads of voodoo converge. It is the point which one travels by the most visible and physical means. Yet to the traveler, it is itself invisible. Encircles the universe.
Now let me just go a little bit forward here. You can see this next ritual in fast speed.
It disappeared abruptly into the quiet water.
Voodoo has given woman, in the figure of Erzuli, exclusive title to that which distinguishes humans from all other forms, their capacity to conceive beyond reality, to desire beyond adequacy, to create beyond need. which move with such homogeneity, there may be one whose movements are exceedingly spectacular. This is a sign that a Loa arrives. Salutes woman as the divinity of the dream, a goddess of love, the muse of beauty. She is identified with the Virgin Mary as mother of man's myth of life. In a sense, she is that very principle by which man conceives and creates divinity. To man himself, she is as mistress. Of infinite luxury, a perfume of refinement. Her arrival pervades the very air. All anxieties, all urgencies vanish. The tempo of movements becomes more leisurely. Tensions dissolve, and the voices soften. One has the impression that a fresh, cooling breeze has sprung up somewhere, and that the heat has become less intense.
Okay, so how about that one? It was beautiful, huh? Very, very different than what we're used to, unless you've seen some of this stuff or you've experienced it. It's very interesting to give this talk because it's very foreign to us to imagine that these experiences happen. And I mean, like I said, you don't have to be dancing or hear drums to have an experience of the sacred. But you do, what I'm pointing out is you do experience in your body, or it doesn't touch us. It doesn't do anything. So, anybody want to talk about that? Anybody want to say anything? Yeah.
I just have a question. Erica, do you know what the significance of twisting the chicken's head like that
It's
is?
a sacrifice. Yeah, it's a sacrifice.
The Loa shows up.
What?
You have to feed the Loas. The Loa wants to show up. They
Yeah.
invite the Loa to dinner.
Yeah, originally there were animal sacrifices in all cultures, and then they became food sacrifices. You know, bringing food to the god, to the altar.
That I understand, but it just looked like it was a painful. It looked painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to get beyond that, but.
Yeah.
I
No.
understand. Yeah. So, yes. Yes.
Oh, all I was going to say was it just seems that, even though I know it's not like you don't have to dance to have like peak experience or experience of transcendence or something, but it's just striking, just thinking like on a somatic level, how much in modern day Western, whatever, culture here, there's just not enough dancing, and just like how much, or movement really, in like just how much that, you know, like all kinds of ailments and like physical issues, just feel like there's so much like stifled emotion.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
not just like moving through.
True, if you think of indigenous cultures, they worship by singing and dancing and being involved.
And also grieving together as well, which is something else, which is
grieving is a powerful time in the transpersonal. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my partner died last year, and shortly about the month after his death, all these synchronicities and spiritual things were happening in my life that just opened me up. It's very beautiful, but very heavy. Yeah. So, what else did people experience or see or imagine? Because this is about the imaginal realm. We're not in this three-dimensional reality. I mean, we are enough to function, or else we'd be psychotic. We aren't psychotic. There's a difference between a mystic and a spiritual relationship and a psychotic. A psychotic gets stuck. I am Christ, you know, and that's it. Their ego, they have a really, a very weak ego, and they don't know how to come out of the experience when they connect with that. And that's why Legba is very important, because he's the threshold. So we know how to go in and we know how to come out. And we do that all the time. So what else did people think or feel? Is this very strange and unusual and weird? What? Yeah.
No,
Uh-huh.
I didn't find it weird. I felt like it's like when I go out dancing with my friends, minus the chicken, which I have a lot of. I think that's critiquable, but maybe that's for another lecture.
What,
I don't think
the
we
chicken?
should. Yeah, I don't think we should take.
It's not our culture.
Yeah. I mean, I would be careful with our, because I don't know who's in the room, but I think that we shouldn't take that for granted as something that we have to do if we're going to be spiritual. But that's a whole other.
Yeah, of course not. The whole sacrifice of animals has totally changed. Most that isn't done.
But the dancing feels like, oh yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you feel when you dance? I mean, there's a difference between the first one and the second one. Very different.
I feel like the look that woman had on her face. I'm like, I see that look when I go out dancing with my friends.
Maybe you felt that.
Maybe
you exuded it. How about the first one? That's more unusual for us. We can sort of relate to the second one, you know. But the first one, where was he?
He wasn't.
He wasn't?
Well,
Uh-huh.
I've been in these situations in
Yeah.
Brazil, and they are mediums. So when I said he wasn't, he as ego himself, identity with this name and this job,
Right.
He wasn't.
He wasn't.
Got out of the way.
He got out of the way. He could get out of the way.
Yes. And what they're singing to the entities that they're inviting to have to come and speak.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the priest in Haiti, and I don't know what happened after the hurricane and the earthquake but the priest in Haiti is more powerful than any politician. That's what people turn to for advice, for unity. And this was a priest. He had the gourd, but it doesn't have to be a priest. The woman wasn't a priest. Anybody can. This can happen to anyone. Anyone that the Loa mounts. The Loa is the divine, and it mounts the person and takes the reins. So was he in danger? Yeah.
What felt important to me was he could be out of the way and be part of the ring of everyone. He
Right.
had this community to hold him.
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt that same sacred feeling doing the most mundane things, like going to the grocery store. Any grocery store, Stop and Shop, Family Dollar. I might be in a very different space.
Right.
And of course, the community doesn't consciously have a ritual to hold me. But as I could feel like I'm part of everyone, I was just pushing my grocery cart around and went to the shops and things like that. But they have it.
Yeah, he has the container. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to be a buzzkill here.
A what?
A buzzkill a little bit. But I feel like this is it feels like an intrusion into the culture. It feels, I know she got permission, but this is a private thing, and there's a context there that I don't know that you wish to know about. And
I don't know. She was there, and she stayed there for a while.
I know, I've studied her films a little bit. I don't know, there's something about it that feels, it doesn't quite feel good to me.
All right.
She did that.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very deep, and it has a context that we know about. I don't even know if we can properly talk about it.
Well, I think we can talk about the archetypal experience, and that's what this is a beautiful example of. When he when he's moving and you see his eyes are just, they're not fully present. But does he fall down on the ground? Does he crash into people? No. He leans back and people hold him. They contain him. They work with him. They help the energy come through. But he's not incapacitated. And he comes back and he brings, or she brings, very important information for himself and the tribe, for the culture. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's hard. Yeah. Okay, anybody else, Joe?
It's such a contrast between the Sufi dancing and their dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Their dancing seemed so harmonious.
Mm.
It seemed well balanced, very self-aware. Whereas these were not self-aware, they seemed to be other-aware, other-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it had a kind of sexuality about it, an eroticism that was animating maybe the movements, whereas the Sufi movements seem to be just generally, the whole sense of the person.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You had something?
Yeah, a few things are lining up for me tonight, I'm a father of 4, I'm a mailman, I'm a songwriter, not necessarily in that order. That's what I do. And, the mind's a beautiful thing, and the body is as well. But when you're able to combine the two, you get this synergistic effect, and it's a difficult state to reach. And I'm always searching for the way to gain access to this meditative state.
Right.
And my experience, for me personally, is I've found when I'm able to sync my body with my mind, whether it's through yoga or running, I hit that phase where, I kind of check out of myself. And the reason I say all this is because I've been writing songs for a long time, okay? Not that they're of substance, and what they're about is immaterial, but it's my hobby, okay? And they just came to me. But then there was a period where it just stopped. And I pick up the guitar, I could not get it to rekindle.
Right.
Now, if you sat down and put me to point and said, write a song, I can do this for you. But that's not the way it came. And I've read a lot of Rumi, but I never knew when you said that a lot of his writings came from him spinning around. And what I've realized is, being a mailman, the first 20 years I was, most of my music came to me when I was walking. After I've been walking, creating this syncopate, this rhythm. Okay?
Yeah, great.
And then it wasn't until tonight that I realized this stopped where I took a drive in Milrow. And I wasn't getting that same thing. And coincidentally, the song stopped coming. And I'm on a walking route again now, and surprise.
That's a great example.
Yeah, these things are just lining up in my head this evening.
Great. Super.
That's all.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just to riff off of that we so mistakenly believe that we create from our minds. And we don't. I don't believe that anyway at all. I believe that the creativity lies within the body. And that's how I write poetry. I go on a walk and I ask my body to give me something as I'm moving. I'm moving my heart.
Good.
Beat.
Good, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't have to be moving. We don't, and I'll
Right.
So, yeah.
But just the idea that the source is not the mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, when I went through a number of periods of altered states, or I was working with Janet Adler when I had this horrendous headache, the doctor said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you," and I began to find my way through it. I would go to her. I was working with her in California in groups, and it was a very beautiful container. She knew where I was. She was an amazing witness. And I would say to her, "I'm having these weird experiences," and she said, "They aren't weird. They're altered states. Let's just name them for what they are. They're altered states. It's not a big deal. I mean, to our culture, this is a big deal, but we have them all the time." And so it's an altered state, which Jung would say is a subtle body experience. So he says the subtle body is necessarily must be beyond space and time. That's when we get into that other place. Every real body fills space because it consists of matter, while the subtle body is said not to consist of matter, or it is matter which is so exceedingly subtle that it cannot be perceived. So it must be a body which does not fill space, a matter which is beyond space, and therefore it would be in no time, the equivalent of the somatic unconscious. So this is this place where we're walking on our mail route, or we're doing the dishes, or we're at the grocery store, and we go into this wonderful open space. Okay? And that's an archetypal experience. And Jung says, the physiological unconscious, the so-called somatic unconscious, which is the subtle body, becomes material because the body is a living unit. That's why we can write the songs. That's why we can bring information back. And our conscious and our unconscious is embedded in it. So Jung keeps coming back to the importance of the body as container and as where it happens. And again, the difference between this and somebody who's can't come back is that we learn how to go in and out of it, or we have a strong enough sense of our I, so that we can mediate it, so we can come back. Okay, so in our modern times, bringing this up to modern times, which I think some of this is, Jung would say that we're having active imagination, that active connection with the unconscious, not just in a dream. And an active imagination is a conscious dialogue with the unconscious, so we're able to listen to it and go back and forth with it. And it's between that subject, me, and the object. Now, of course, we have objects in the outside world, mothers, fathers, lovers, children, trees, house. But the inner world is what we're looking for again, because we've been separated. So this is an amazing painting by a man named Peter Berghauser, who was Swiss, and he was one of the most famous graphic designers in Switzerland. And he had a dream which just totally blew him away. And he began his journey. He started working with von Franz and worked with one of the early Jungian analysts and worked with her for the rest of his life. And there's a beautiful book called Windows into Eternity, which is about his process in his paintings, and it's absolutely amazing. And this was his first dream that he painted. He didn't paint it until, he had it in the dream in 1942, and he couldn't paint it until 1975 because it was so powerful. It woke him up. And what the dream was that he and his wife were going to analysis. And they went into this tower. He was going to analysis, and his wife was accompanying him. They go into this tower, and suddenly this figure appears, this fish, whatever figure it is, and he's terrified. He steps back, and it goes right up to his wife, who's his feminine side, his anima, and she's just, oh, hello. And it accepts her, and she accepts it, and then they have to go upstairs, up the tower, to get to the analysis. And as they go up, she has no problem, because she's connected with this part of herself, the archetypal. Now this is the feminine in him, and he keeps running into all these obstacles and having to jump over things and almost falling, and so that's his initiation dream that brings him into his work. And he painted every time he had dreams and he would go to von Franz, he would do these beautiful paintings. And he stopped being a graphic designer because it was taking him away from his journey. So let me read an experience. This is from Jung. He says there's a figure in the unconscious that he comes across very early called Salome, and she's blind, and she's from the Bible, Salome, and he starts having a dialogue with her. And he's having this dialogue, he's with her, in his imagination in the mundus imaginalis, which is what the Sufis call the imaginal realm, which is where we go when we have these experiences, you know. And the imagination in our culture is like, it's the imagination, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it can be, it is, it does. So he says, then a most disagreeable thing happened. Salome became very interested in me, and she assumed that I could cure her blindness. She began to worship me. I said, why do you worship me? She replied, you're Christ. In spite of my objections, she maintained this. I said, this is madness, and became filled with skeptical resistance. Then I saw the snake. She comes along with the snake. The snake, which is a very powerful archetypal image from all ages. The snake approaches me. The snake comes close and begins to encircle me and press me in her coils. The coils reach up to my heart. I realize as I struggle that I have assumed the attitude of the crucifixion in his body. He actually takes on that. In the agony and the struggle, I sweated so profusely that the water flowed down on all sides of me. Then Salome rose, and she could see. While the snake was pressing me, I felt that my face had taken on the face of an animal of prey, a lion or a tiger. So this is his archetypal relationship with the feminine aspect of himself. It's blind. And his relationship to it heals her and transforms him. He opens him to another level. Okay. So, the place of realization, this is neither mind nor matter, but the intermediate realm of subtle reality, which can be adequately only expressed through the symbol. Now, when we're moving, we don't think of a symbol. An image doesn't just mean a visual image. An image could be music, poetry, it could be any medium. We could be expressing it in clay, we could be moving it. So the realization is the intermediate realm of the subtle body, which can be adequately only expressed by the symbol. The symbol is neither abstract or concrete. It's neither rational nor irrational. It is always both. The unconscious can only be reached safely by the symbol. For this reason, the process of individuation cannot do without the symbol. The symbol is the primitive, think about this, the symbol is the primitive exponent of the unconscious, but also the idea that corresponds to the highest intuition of the conscious mind. So it's the most primitive part of ourselves, and it's also the highest intuitive place. So when you have a creation, a song or something, those two things come together. This deep, primal, unconscious place, and this powerful, wonderful, intuitive place, and they come together. Any thoughts about that? Yeah.
The word phonic came to
my
mind.
Absolutely. Phonic. It's in the realm of the unconscious. Yeah. But it's both. It's coming together of the spirit and the unconscious, the soul and the spirit. Yeah. Anita.
I learned early on that meditation in a sitting position didn't work for me. But every time I moved in Tai Chi, for example, I could feel the spirit coming through. And so I don't try to sit and meditate much anymore, but in the movement of my body, in a situation such as Tai Chi, I feel the spirit moving.
Yeah, in any of those forms, yoga is tantric, Tai Chi, Qigong.
Yoga is one. And Qigong.
Authentic movement. It gives us a space for the energy to move and for us to become conscious of it, which is what it's about. Yeah. Here's another example. This is a man who I worked with in the group. He was the co-mover, and he was a middle-aged man. He was a lawyer, and he worked with environmental stuff in California, and he was in the group with Janet Adler and I. And he says, as I enter the movement, I think of the importance to me of knowing what's happening and where things are going. What would it be like to live on the edge of the unexpected? As I lie on the floor, I feel the need to stretch different parts of my body. I extend and spread my legs, extend my torso to feel more space in my ribs, and reach out my body as far as possible. I feel my body lengthen and open. It feels delicious. I roll, stretch, and extend. I love this spacious feeling. I don't want to become entangled with other movers. As I move, I feel my body rising up from the floor on my knees. He just, whoop, there he is. I reach to the sky. My body rises again to my feet like I've been picked up by a gentle, powerful, invisible source. I stand tall, my arms reach back, my head tilts back, and a deep, screechy, mournful howl rises up from me and out of me into the fullness of the room and the sky. It comes repeatedly and contrasts with other harmonious sounds in the room. The howl has its own power. It calls to the moon, like the coyote in the night has called for thousands of years. It continues through the coyote and through me. I feel magnificent. There's that feeling. Something has released in me. I welcome the unexpected. I move into harmony and contact with other movers. No struggle, no resistance. So it takes him into this open place. And he says, he reflects, my mind and body are often constricted by my need to control circumstances and be on top of things. The movement, especially the stretching back and the howl, comes unexpectedly and are a surprise. It reminds me of my need to let go and listen for or await some deeper wisdom that comes through me from the unknown places in my body. There's so much freedom and relief in that howl. When I allow myself to be open to the unexpected, and this can be in any form, and to experience it fully, it brings a freedom and it allows me to live in the moment. The movement has come repeatedly on the movement floor. It also has recollected in my daily life and reminds me to let go, howl in whatever I'm doing, and reap the riches of the unexpected. I find it allows me to be more at ease and grounded in my life. So the more we can open, the more grounded we are. The more we trust. Okay. All right. Go and move on. So what are the steps that that we need? We need to create a safe space for this. I mean, if you're feeling safe, you can do whatever. But forming a sacred space of temenos, we need to allow the ego to relax and let whatever wants to come through, whether we're drawing or writing or making clay or moving. And we need to get out of the way, and we need to be dumb. And Nathan Schwartz-Salant says, we need to orient toward our bodies, discover it has a life, and with that a new kind of being awake. Our body material we hear, rather than ignoring them and grasping for theory or amplification as a life preserver, we begin to be able to sit and be dumb, to not know, to listen and respect this process, which is so important. We don't need to figure it out. We don't need to control it. Most of all, we begin to respect silence, for we know that only if something appears will it have value. We will find nothing, certainly nothing we look for, through theory and introspection. Only a mutual discovery can be of value. In other words, us reaching for it and it, whatever the other is, the symbol, the experience, meeting us, and it comes together. Okay. Any thoughts before I play a final piece of this journey?
Well, it is also said in Sufism that that it comes to you and chooses you.
Yes, it chooses you. That's grace. Yeah. I mean, it can come to anybody at any time. That's what the modern religions, especially Christianity, has separated us from. The way it's developed. Christ didn't say that. But that you need the priest as the conduit. You don't have the experience. You can't have the experience. The church, it's the priest. That's the one who mediates. But that's not true. That's a patriarchal way of controlling. And I don't think that was in the original feeling of what was going on anyway, in the beginning. Yeah?
I just get stuck on it coming to us, as opposed to us merely opening enough so that we can speak.
Right. Well, they both have to be true, right? We have to open.
Right.
But sometimes it just
I
hits
mean,
you.
it could be there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is.
It's not like it's coming to me, it's just it's there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can be both. I mean, it sometimes, like when I had those headaches, it just sort of came. And I had to, and I went, oh. And slowly I began to realize what was going on.
But you were in a place of being open to finding or seeing it or experiencing.
Not necessarily at that moment. I didn't want a headache. And in fact, maybe the headache was a not knowing, kind of a resistance. I don't think it was resistance. It was that I wasn't open. My body didn't know how to let that energy come at the time. And when it came up through my spine, and I had a very powerful Kundalini experience. And it took 5 years to get there. So, yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Ed.
Well, the earlier question showing the voodoo dancing about is it dangerous? Is there harm here? We need psychosis in our culture because we don't have those kind of ritualized breakthroughs in community.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in that culture is present for people to be able to go into non-normative experience and be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the context and the history and the tradition and the teachings and being trained from when you're
Mm-hmm.
young and the discipline and the community surrounding you and holding you so you don't fall.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that and much more keeps it safe. Without that, we need people going crazy to tell us about the other side. And we need to lose it ourselves sometimes to learn about the other side and be drawn into it.
One of the differences between Jung and Freud is Jung worked with psychotics. Freud worked with hysterics, mostly women. And he walked into Bear Colsley Clinic once, and this guy was standing, and he said, "Dr. Jung, look, the sun has a phallus, and that's where the wind comes from." And Dr. Jung said, "Oh, that's interesting, okay." And as he was studying mythology, he came upon the myth in Egypt that in fact the sun had a phallus, and that's where the wind came from. And that was his beginning to understand the art, as well as his own journey. He began to understand the images and the symbols that were being spoken of, and the context of the person in that. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do one more film, and this is a film called Looking for Me, or Still Looking, actually. And, whoops, go away. Go away. And this is a film of authentic movement, so this is a modern, very modern piece. And I remember when I got on the authentic movement floor, there was nobody told me what to do. There was no music. It was just like a blank piece of paper, like an artist would have. And I just felt liberated, because I studied a lot of dance, and I didn't have to do anybody's dance. I didn't have to do the steps in a particular way. I could do anything I wanted. And it really became an entry for me into this level of work, as well as personal work came up, but also the weaving of the personal work and the shadow work and the issues in my childhood, and then the opening to the archetypal level. So sit back and enjoy and see what happens. Here's full screen. Okay.
Lower the legs, Erica.
Can you, Albert? Just do that middle one, see what happens with the middle one. That's it. Do a little more. That's fine.
This is a film film about authentic movement, a practice concerned with the relationship between moving and witnessing, an invitation to move closer to the self. People looking for clarity in their lives find this way of work useful as therapy, as resource for any creative process, and as spiritual practice. Though both men and women study this form, in this situation, these 8 women are joining me. Authentic movement offers a way of learning how to see and how to be seen as we are. Within this framework, this form assumes complete trust in the body's capacity to remember and to tell the truth. With this dynamic at the center, in the past 20 years, a developmental process has become apparent. First, a person learns to allow self-directed movement in the presence of a witness. Next, the mover learns to witness another person move. Finally, people move and witness in a circle. Moving and witnessing takes us into and through personality, toward an integration of body and spirit, toward wholeness. Now, we begin. As I witness many people moving, I try to create a clear and safe container for the movers, though they take responsibility for their own physical safety by opening their eyes when necessary. Eyes are closed to invite deeper listening. In the dark and silence, journeys begin with feelings, images, sounds, memories, thoughts, and sensations. Gates to the unconscious open as movers descend. As the witness, I have no directions for the movers. There is no way I can know what they must do. Not knowing what to do, Margaret's only guidance comes from her body and its deepening impulses. In the beginning of this process, impulse finds form primarily in 3 ways. For Margaret, energy is expressed in specific body parts. Elizabeth uses gesture. She is gathering. For Jean, idiosyncratic movements emerge. Originating in the unconscious, they have been buried under the rational, ordered body ego. They may initially appear as irrational and unfamiliar, yet they feel right. As the work develops, personality differences become visible. Some people, like Susan, follow emotions easily. Others, like Margaret, often follow images. Bonnie usually follows her kinesthetic sensations. Patterns emerge. They are expressions of unresolved aspects of personal development. For example, Bonnie finds herself upside down over and over again. Another example, when Susan feels emotional, she often brings her hands to her neck. Kate's pattern. She moves most truthfully when her head is covered. My time was about wanting to be seen and making myself visible without going outside myself. After moving, we gather in a circle. Movers speak first.
At one point,
What had once been unconscious becomes conscious as people explore, sort through, and try to describe where they've been. As the witness offers her experience in response, each mover can learn that she has been seen.
I was so far away, I didn't know. I just didn't think I was ever going to be able to come back. So I was so glad when you were there. You know, people that knew that they didn't know. There's sure to be a lot more to not be known.
As people see themselves a little more clearly, personal consciousness evolves out of the collective unconscious.
Okay. So, do we have the lights on here? Hey, this is, so this is Janet Adler. She's my mentor, and she's one of the early people that developed authentic movement. And I started working with her in 1975. But I did, and she was here in Northampton. The whole authentic movement community here was very strong back then. And then I worked with her around this headache stuff when she was in California in 1988, I think. But anyway, so this is very different. I mean, you don't have to understand what something means. Hopefully, if you're being creative, you allow it to emerge, whether it's a painting or a poem or movement, and as you do the process and you just ponder it, you don't think about it, the meaning becomes clear, the experience becomes clear, and you understand. I've seen so many people move and the same gestures come up, and they go, I wonder what that is, or it's the same posture or something, and I say, I don't know. So it keeps coming up. They don't make it happen, and it keeps coming up, and then suddenly one day they go, oh, I know what that means, because they've gotten it from their inner experience, not from thinking about it. And it may be a resolution of childhood issue. It may be a connection with the supernatural or the archetypal. So what do people feel after you watch this? Yeah.
I just have to say something really quickly.
Sure.
I lived in that place right afterwards.
Oh, yeah?
For 10 years, that's the old creamery.
Oh, really?
Before
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
Music Institute there.
Okay.
Just was, it's like a weird flashback.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, that's the creamery.
Yeah, that's the creamery. I moved there, and then when she stopped using that, she went to the studio that was in The Birds. Remember The Birds, the movie? We moved in that studio. That was interesting. Anyway, so this is a very different thing than we're used to seeing. And this is in modern life. So, what do people feel? What comes up for you? Does it feel odd, weird, curious, usual?
Well, it just feels refreshing to watch for folks who are working through developmental trauma or something, or completing incompleted movements or something to that effect within the developmental trauma realm. For those who are doing that, I thought that was neat. And for folks, yeah.
And what?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it could be developmental trauma, or it could be
something else. Yeah.
Some spiritual connect. I mean, to me, when we're going in, yeah, exactly. When we're going into those places, it's both of them, isn't it?
Yeah, because
really.
the way that trauma also just opens you up to that, but then there's that like potential. So it just seemed like a really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, the more we're able to work through that stuff, the more we're able to be open, and vice versa.
And having the witness is just so key.
Yeah.
It's just like
it can be very important, whether it's the analyst or the witness or the it doesn't have to be Janet. It could be another mover. It could be somebody who looks at your art and you go, oh wow, look at that. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else have any thoughts or feelings? Yeah.
So it seems very primordial.
And
I suddenly was thinking of cave dwellers and the art on the walls. And I was thinking that here we are in an age where we're thinking and analyzing our experiences, and I often wonder, what was human life like back in those days, and what was the meaning of expressing the art on the walls in the caves? And I don't know what to make of being reminded of that while I was watching that. I'm just thinking that this movement is very primordial and kind of an urge to go back to these kind of origins of our life and our impulses.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, it has the primordial. Remember the symbol is that primordial, deep unconscious, and it's also the intuition. It's like it goes forward and backwards at the same time, and we meet it right there in the present moment. Yeah, it really heals that split. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Well, I felt it was so refreshing, and I felt drawn into it, and it seems delicious too.
Delicious. That's wonderful. Yeah. Let me just get this for a little bit. So anybody else? Yeah.
I thought it seemed really strange at the beginning. I thought it was going to be more dancing, more dance-like, but there was no music. So it was very slow, and I thought it was interesting, the idea of wanting a witness. That the witness was important.
Yeah, it was slow here, but it can also, I mean, people can be up dancing or stomping or, whatever the impulse is. And if they're standing up and stomping, then they open their eyes enough so that they take responsibility for their safety. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anybody else?
A very somatic way of trying to get into the unknown.
Yes,
Not
absolutely.
with your head figuring out the
Absolutely.
unknown, but somatically not knowing what the next gesture would be.
Right.
Put you in the now where
Exactly. It's getting in the now, which is the door, isn't it? Isn't that the door? Yeah. Okay. When the great swing has taken the individual into the world of symbolic mysteries, nothing comes of it, nothing can come from it, unless it has been associated with the earth, unless it has happened when the individual was in the body. So, thank you for coming.
Remember, there will be a salon. Mark will take you there if you'd like to follow him.